You know how sometimes you catch a bit of news about the economy and it feels like you almost need a secret decoder ring just to figure out what's actually going on?
Yeah, definitely, especially lately.
Right. With the stock market doing its roller coaster thing. I'm guessing you, like me, are probably looking for a way to make sense of it all without getting totally overwhelmed.
Absolutely. It can feel like a lot to process.
So for this deep dive, we're trying something maybe a little different. We've got some commentary on the recent economic situation, but it comes with a bit of a comedic twist.
A comedic twist. Okay, that's one way to make economics interesting. What have you found?
Well, it's not exactly, a deep academic paper. It's more something you might just stumble upon late at night, a Saturday Night Live sketch.
SNL.
Yeah, specifically the cold open from a recent episode. It had a fictional Donald Trump character giving his particular take on what's happening with the economy.
Interesting. Sometimes satire like that, it really cuts through the noise, doesn't it? It can
Yeah.
highlight things in a way that maybe straight news reporting doesn't quite capture.
That's what I was thinking.
So the idea here is to look past the jokes, sort of peel back the layers and see what underlying economic themes they might actually be touching on.
Exactly. Like we're treating this comedy bit as a kind of puzzle. What are the gags really pointing towards about, the actual economy?
Okay, I'm intrigued. So where does it start? You mentioned a cold open.
Right. So to set the scene, it begins with a spoof of Jesus clearing the temple, the money changers getting kicked out.
Okay. Classic biblical scene. Mikey Day as Jesus, I presume,
Yeah.
making a stand against commercialism in a sacred space.
That's the one. And then who walks in? James Austin Johnson doing his Trump impression.
Of course.
And he makes quite the entrance, saying something like, "Remind you of anyone, the money's gone. Hi, it's me, your favorite president, Donald Jesus Trump."
Donald Jesus Trump. Wow. That's quite the comparison right off the bat.
Yeah, pretty bold. And it immediately links his arrival to, well, the money disappearing, sets a certain tone.
It definitely grabs your attention.
Yeah.
And what's his take on the economy itself? You mentioned a mess.
Exactly. The Trump character basically admits he created a bit of an oopsie in the economy, his words.
Oopsie.
Yeah, and he blames it on his beautiful tariffs. It's this sort of funny moment of like fake self-awareness. He's pointing the finger at his own policies.
Which is interesting because this sketch is directly linking the economic disruption to tariffs,
Oh.
or at least the uncertainty around them.
Right.
And tariffs, just for anyone maybe not following super closely, are taxes on imported goods.
Mm-hmm.
When those tax rates change a lot or seem unpredictable, well, it makes planning really hard for businesses.
Mm-hmm.
Businesses involved in international trade, they don't know their costs or if their pricing will work.
Yeah.
That kind of uncertainty can definitely make the economy jittery.
Yeah, jittery is a good word. And this leads into probably the most memorable line. I thought the stock market did a Jesus bit.
Yes, that line. Okay, let's unpack that. It's quite the analogy.
It really is. So how did he explain it?
Well, the character lays it out. It died, meaning the stock market fell sharply.
Okay.
Then on the third day, it was risen, suggesting a recovery, a bounce back.
Right, like the Easter story.
Exactly. But then he adds the punchline. And then on fourth day, it died again, possibly never to return.
Oof. So big ups and downs, a crash, a recovery, and then another crash. But this time with this feeling of like finality, or at least deep pessimism.
Precisely. It paints a picture of extreme volatility, drop, recovery, another drop, and this lingering doubt about the future.
And the way he delivers it, then saying he wishes Jesus would come back and, quote, "get me out of this."
It's funny, but it also kind of captures that feeling of helplessness maybe people feel when things seem so unpredictable.
It does. That rapid rise and fall, plus the pessimism, it satirizes that whiplash feeling you can get during turbulent economic times. That sense that any recovery might just be temporary. It really highlights the emotional side of investing too, doesn't it? Seeing your saving swing wildly like that, it connects to, behavioral finance ideas.
Absolutely. That volatility is a real challenge for investors and just for general confidence.
So after the Jesus analogy, the Trump character then says something like, "Now everything is back exactly how it was, minus a few $1 trillion."
Right. And that minus a few $1 trillion part is doing a lot of work in that sentence.
Yeah, it seems pretty important.
It is. The humor there, I think, comes from the massive understatement. Things might look normal again on the surface, maybe, but there's been this huge underlying cost.
Uh-huh.
Those trillions represent a significant loss of value. It makes you ask, well, who bore the brunt of that loss, even if the market seems stable now?
It's like saying the operation was a success, but the patient is bankrupt.
Kinda, yeah. A superficially positive statement undercut by a massive hidden cost.
And then comes maybe the most pointed line in the whole thing. A historic transfer of wealth from the middle class to my buddies.
Ooh, yeah. That's pretty direct, even for SNL satire.
Right. No pulling punches there.
No. And that line, even though it's played for laughs, it taps into a very real, very serious conversation we have in society about economic inequality,
Uh-huh.
about whether certain policies or economic events tend to benefit some groups much more than others. When the sketch says "my buddies," it's satirizing the concept of crony capitalism, right?
Yeah, that perception that maybe people with connections benefit unfairly when things get shaken up.
Exactly. The idea that those close to power might gain from policy-driven economic shifts. It doesn't give specifics, obviously it's a joke, but it highlights that anxiety about fairness.
And just to round it off, the sketch ties back to Easter, with the Trump character mentioning he didn't go to church, even on Easter Sunday.
Right. Keeping the character consistent, always bringing it back to himself.
Classic. So, okay, let's pull back from the jokes for a second. What are the key economic realities this whole sketch is actually commenting on? What should we take away from it?
Well, I think the most obvious one is just the real-world stock market volatility we've
Yes,
seen.
definitely. The ups and downs.
Yeah, the sketch just takes that reality and exaggerates it for comedic effect.
Yeah.
Turns the volume way up, as you said earlier.
And that "did to Jesus" line, it really captures the anxiety that comes with that volatility, doesn't it? Not knowing what's next.
It absolutely does. It highlights how hard prediction is, especially when government policy, like tariffs, is shifting.
Which brings us to the tariffs. The sketch pretty clearly points to them, or the uncertainty around them, as a potential driver of the instability.
Yes, it suggests that the constant changes and threats related to trade policy might be making the economic waters feel, well, choppy.
For businesses trying to plan, that must be tough.
It is. That unpredictability, it's a real concern economists and business leaders often raise. It can make companies hesitant to invest or hire, which can slow things down overall.
Right. So volatility driven partly by policy uncertainty, and then there's that transfer of wealth line.
hmm And while it's delivered humorously, it really forces you to think about who wins and who loses during economic turmoil. It touches on that bigger issue of economic inequality.
Yeah. Does everyone benefit equally when things recover? Or are some better positioned to ride out the storm or even profit from it?
Exactly. It reflects that wider debate about fairness and whether current systems might unintentionally widen the gap between, say, the wealthy and everybody else.
So it's interesting. We're laughing at this fictional character on TV, but the reason the jokes land is because they connect to real anxieties, real discussions about the economy.
That's often what good satire does, right? It takes real issues, real concerns, and holds them up in a distorted mirror that makes us notice them differently.
It shows that humor can actually be a pretty powerful way to comment on serious issues.
Definitely. But it's crucial, of course, to remember it is satire. It's not a detailed economic analysis or forecast.
Good point. It's an exaggeration, a reflection, not the whole picture.
Right. But it resonates because it touches on things people are actually feeling or talking about.
Okay, so just to quickly recap the main satirical points we pulled out. Potential link between tariff uncertainty and economic instability.
Uh-huh. The sheer whiplash of stock market volatility.
Right, and underlying concerns about wealth transfer and economic inequality.
Pretty much sums up the core themes the sketch seems to be playing with, even through the jokes.
And hopefully for you listening, looking at it this way offers maybe a slightly different lens on some of the economic headlines you might be seeing.
It shows how these big economic topics filter into popular culture, doesn't it? Even into comedy. They're clearly on people's minds.
Definitely. It makes you think about where else these conversations are happening.
So this deep dive into a comedy sketch, it kind of leaves us with a question for you, the listener. Now that we've unpacked some of the economic ideas bubbling under the surface of the humor, what really stood out?
Yeah, what one or two things are you maybe thinking about a bit differently now regarding economic stability or perhaps the impact of policy decisions?
It's just fascinating how even, a few minutes of SNL can spark some deeper thought about the forces shaping our economy and our financial lives. Something to chew on.